You always take the best habits of whoever is mentoring you at the time, because not everybody, we're not perfect. We all have insecurities. We all have imperfections, but you take the best parts of your mentor, whether it's one person or if it's 10 people that's influencing you, and you take those attributions and become into yourself. You mold them into who you are.
Ooh, it's time for jam sessions with Tina. She's got leadership, insights, and more. Come on in. Leave the titles at the door.
Welcome to Jam Sessions with Tina. I'm your host, Tina Eliana. This is our first episode. We will launch our podcast by exploring the hidden cost of waiting for permission to lead. Our guest today is JD Carbonell. JD is a dark fiction author specializing in psychological thrillers and slow burn horror narratives. He brings a unique, grounded perspective to the creative world, backed by over 30 years of experience in the commercial construction industry, including more than 20 years in direct leadership and operational management. Known for his discipline and strategic vision, JD embodies the philosophy of leading without waiting for permission, proving that true authority comes from execution and real-world experience, not just a title. He has been married for almost 14 years to a woman who has been able to pursue her dreams and passions because of his love, nurture, and unwavering support. My guest, my husband, the love of my life. Thanks for joining me for this momentous occasion.
I thank you, Tina. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be your first guest. I'm looking forward to speaking with you and answering any other questions you might have for me.
Well, I know just as being your wife and all the conversations that we have, I know the expertise that you bring to this topic. And so I'm looking forward to it. I believe you're going to have a lot of great insight for our listeners. And I'm just going to jump in and ask you my first question, which is, in many workplaces, people assume leadership begins when someone receives a title, promotion, or formal authority. Why do you think so many people wait for permission before they start leading?
I firmly believe, from a psychological standpoint, it stems from a lack of a fear. People are afraid to step out. They're afraid to overstep boundaries. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid of many things. Could also feed into their ego, where they want validation before they start assuming authority or any kind of leadership roles, and possibly even wanting the people around them to understand their position. A lot of people, I've been exposed to disc testing. So as you're aware of, I'm a very dominating person, very demanding, class D personality. So it's not hard for me to kind of take that brass ring and just go with it without even being asked.
Yeah.
Someone that might be more of an I, an influencer, or a C, more conservative, might find it more challenging, might need that validation, or might need that kind of push in that direction. So it just depends on their personality more than anything.
What would you think are some of the hidden costs people pay when they wait for someone else to recognize their potential before contributing at a higher level? Specifically, you mentioned, I love the disc personalities, that there are some people that their personality they just wait. They don't have that as sort of personality.
Exactly.
So what do you think there's some cost associated with that?
Well, it could stunt your career growth, number one. Opportunities for advancement, if you're not willing to show, because most employers that are looking for leaders are looking for those to take that brass ring and take that first step without getting the recognition or the advancement first, because it's easier to give it to you once you've shown the attributions.
Mm-hmm.
So by hesitating and waiting, you're in some ways hurting your own career path. If you want to get the recognition, you do have to take that first step and show them that you have the backbone or the courage and the fortitude to handle the pressure. That's what it all comes down to is being able to handle that stress and the stressors that are going to come with that responsibility.
There's also leadership within our homes, within our communities, within religious organizations. So, across the board, how can waiting for permission affect a person's confidence, growth, opportunities, or even influence over time, in not just the workplace, but in all aspects of leadership?
It's been my experience in my years of construction and working communities, even as a teenager and a young man coming up in middle school, leading up into Boy Scouts and all of this. Uh, it can definitely hamper your confidence if you're not given that mentorship. So a lot of your leadership comes from the coaching that you receive. It comes from the mentoring that you get as a young person, young woman, young man, that these adults that take you by the hand and kind of mold you, um, they don't understand the influence that they're having in the same way that you're doing with the younger generation now. By taking them and mentoring them, you are giving them the confidence to grow and the confidence to seize the moment and seize these opportunities, uh, that then becomes the next generation of influence that does the same thing for their next generation after them.
I call that living in the ripples. You know, we've
Yes.
got we've got to live in the ripples of other people's lives.
You always take the best habits of whoever is mentoring you at the time, because not everybody, we're not perfect. We all have insecurities, we all have imperfections, but you take the best parts of your mentor, whether it's one person or if it's 10 people that's influencing you, and you take those attributions and become into yourself. You mold them into who you are, not not taking the negative parts. I took both positive and negative because I seen how people mistreated others, and I seen how rugged people were, and that made the conscious decision within me as a leader of the kind of leader I didn't want to be and the kind of leadership I was not going to portray. And I've taken all the best parts of the worst people that I've ever worked around and found at least one good thing they were good at as a leader and formed that into my personality. And it's gotten me to who I am now, to where I am looked at as a leader and given responsibility, of whether it's a small thing or if it's a large thing. I'm asked quite often to go, as you know, go put out fires in different places.
Yeah.
I'm very good at that. I can't explain why or how. I just am.
I think a great leader is somebody that can do that. You've got to be somebody that anybody's willing to come talk to you and ask you questions without fear of ridicule, without fear of being made to feel like, well, that was a dumb question, kind of thing. And at the same time, recognize that you are the person in a position that's making the decisions, and that there is a respect associated with that kind of a role. There's a responsibility also for a leader to recognize the influence that they are having. When we're talking about, and I loved what you said about, there could be even just cherry picking one or two things that you may like of somebody's qualities. And what I have seen are sometimes people think it's an all or nothing. I have to be exactly like this person.
Yes.
And what you're doing is you're taking that person's personality on. How do they develop the discernment of being okay to say, I like this one specific thing about this person, and it's okay to incorporate that into my personality, and at the same time not be exactly like that person without fear of that person's going to reject me if I'm not exactly like them. Have you ever experienced people like that?
If you're always worried about what people think about you, you're never going to get anywhere. You can't worry, what people think about you. You can't control what they think. You can't control what they say.
Yeah.
So if they reject you because you're not like them, then that's just proof to you that they're not the right person for you. They're not the right mentor and a
Yeah.
teacher for you, because at the end of the day, my job as a leader, even if it's just one quality that somebody takes from me, it's my job to mold them into a leader, not like me. I want them to be better than me. So I teach them even through my bad experiences, all my the times that I've burnt piece of equipment up, to all my failures, to where they can learn from those and become better than me. That at the end of the day, if as long as I've done that, I've done my job. I've been successful in molding them into who they are, because I want them to be themselves and be true to themselves. And the easiest way for them to begin to understand how to do that is to first understand how they learn. Are you an audible person? Are you hands on? Can you see a picture and learn from that? Once you learn how you learn and you identify how you learn, then you can identify the kind of teacher you need. Because I'm a visual person. I'm not audible. You can tell me all day long how to do something. I'm never going to get it, as you've tried to explain to me in programs and things. So for me, it's not having an audible type teacher. It's not the best fit for me. And so I had to learn that at a very young age. And now most everybody that came up in construction that were older than me at the time were all hands-on. There was no audible back in that generation. And that's a different story for a different time, but for sure. But for someone to not be afraid to learn, they need to identify what they want, how they learn, and not be afraid of what people think.
You talked about the vulnerability that you have as a leader to be able to say, here's things that I've done that were not the best choices, learn from my mistakes essentially. You don't see that in every leader. What do you think might be the reason behind some leaders' hesitation or even unwillingness to want to share the missteps with those that they are leading?
It's a point of weakness. That's all it comes down to. People don't want to be viewed as being weak. And because they feel like being vulnerable makes them weak, therefore they're not going to show any vulnerability. The best leaders that I've ever worked around were the ones that weren't afraid to open up. And those are the people that had the most impact on me, that I knew right away that I wanted to be like that. Now, has it always been easy for me? No. Coming up in the 80s and learning in construction in the 90s, you were always taught as a young man, walk it off, toughen up, pull up your bootstraps. We've heard all these vernaculars through the years, and suck it up, buttercup. We say things like that, and we understand what we mean, but people around us don't necessarily understand.
Yeah.
And so because we live in that lifestyle, and we show that we're not really wanting to be vulnerable, you have to show every aspect of who you are as a leader for people to understand what makes you a leader. In my opinion, that's been my experience.
Why do capable people sometimes struggle to see themselves as leaders?
I think it goes down to all that we've talked about so far. Your confidence, your opportunities that you've been given, your hesitation out of fear. If you're always afraid of failure, you're never going to succeed. And in doing that, you're allowing fear to ultimately already win. You can't live by fear. They want to operate from a place of fear. All they're asking for is your obedience. They're not asking for your loyalty. They just want you to comply.
Yeah.
And as a person, whether they're in their 20s or whether they're in 50s, someone that's listening to your podcast, if they want to become a leader, you have to understand that you're going to have bad days, you're going to have failures, or you're going to fall flat on your face. But it's the courage of being able to get up and understand that it's not always going to be like that. You're going to have some successes. It's going to be baby steps.
Yeah.
So being able to see yourself as a leader, it's just taking that first step through the door, over the threshold of conquering your fear. The first step is always going to be the hardest. Anybody that I'm working with that want to learn how to be a leader, you have to make choices, right, wrong, or indifferent. I need you to make a choice. Now, if it's the wrong one, you and I will have a conversation, and I will coach you and mentor you and teach you how to learn from that mistake. But if it's the right one, you're going to get the attaboys, and you're going to get the pat on the back, and you're going to get the congratulations in front of upper management, because I don't need any of that, because you are a reflection of my leadership skills.
We've talked about how you came up in the trades in a very different time, very what is always referred to as old school. Leadership was viewed very differently when you came up into the trades versus how it is now. So How have the expectations around leadership changed? And what lessons from that old school era do you think are worth still keeping around?
So the old school mentality, leadership, I've worked with gentlemen that if they weren't yelling at you and cussing at you and throwing things at you, they didn't like you. I've had guys that would sit there and watch you all day. We call it bird dogging. They get paid to do that, and they would sit there and just stand there and watch you and work all day. Uh, and even with all of these types of different personalities that I never agreed with and always clashed with, I always took, like I said earlier, the one nugget from any of them, and a lot of them was just mainly their work ethic. A lot of these older gentlemen, they were brought up in a time where they worked from sun up to sundown, and so they were always on time. They never miss work, and that became ingrained in me. To now, where if I'm going to be 1 minute late for work, I just soon miss the whole day. I cannot stand being late because of their leadership. Um, and some of the things that doesn't work these days. You can't really go around yelling at people. You can't go around throwing things at people. That's unnecessary. But I think the one thing that I learned from all of them, even good, bad, and the ugly, that is still true today is being honest with people.
Mm.
You have to be honest with someone. If someone comes up to you, and if you, one of your listeners, if you are in a leadership role, somebody comes to you and asks you, how am I doing? You can't you can't sugarcoat it. You need to be professional and polite about it, but you do need to address, you know, the positive and the negative with them, because otherwise you're doing them a disservice if you're not being honest with them. There's a lot of things that we could learn that were good from that older generation that I'm afraid that somewhere down the line in the next generation or two or three, we're going to start losing a lot of those attributes and a lot of those skills and those mindsets. Because at the end of the day, the old timers that brought me up in the construction trades, they cared about their job. They cared so much about how their product looked. That is the first thing that was ever really mentally and psychologically beaten into me, was take pride in your workmanship. And now we have computers that do it for you, so you don't have to learn, you don't have to remember numbers. There's calculations that I've not had to use in 15 years that I can still tell you about.
Mm.
And so this next generation, they're not having to learn how things actually function, how things have to get put together, the way things will operate. So as leaders of today, specifically in construction, you have to think about how you're going to be leading the next generation. They're having to learn this new way of installing things and this new way of construction. So you as a leader have to understand how changes are going to affect you as well, because you're going to have to change with the way construction changes.
I talk in food a lot, and I think about, if you go to a wedding, right? And they've got this beautiful 3-tiered cake. It's enticing. It doesn't matter. I've had so many cakes. It's like, oh, this tastes horrible, but it looks fantastic, right?
Yes.
What if the most delicious cake looked like crap? Who wants to really even eat that? Who wants to try that? You want it to not only just look good, it also needs to taste good. There needs to
Yes.
be pride in the quality of what you're creating and in the presentation of what you're presenting to your company, to your client, to your team, and how you're approaching this situation. Be proactive. One thing that makes me cringe is the phrase, "That's not my job." If it's part of what you are creating, then it is your job to some extent. It may not be the decision maker, it may not be
Mhm.
your responsibility, but if it's going to impact you in some way, shape, or form, get involved, ask questions. We have more forms of communication than we've ever had. And it seems like the more we get, the less ability people have to know how to communicate, because their screens, and I love screens, I love technology, because we're on them so much, I think our generation had the ability of, we still had to communicate face to face. You still had
Yes.
to learn the art of building a relationship. And even if it's through a screen or a text message, there is still an art of being able to develop a relationship there. If I tell you I will contact you at 3 o'clock, I'll send you a text at 3 o'clock and give you an update. Even if there's no further progress, if you tell somebody I'm going to send you that text message at 3 o'clock, guess what? You send them a text message, because what you're building is that relationship with that person. I know that you are currently writing your first psychological thriller. You've not studied writing. I know that this, like, you've had this story and you finally said, I've got to get it put on paper. What has that experience taught you about stepping into something new before feeling fully qualified or ready?
I've always had a knack for being creative. It's taught me, again, not being fearful. So it's that's that part of me that has struggled with, you know, is the story really, is it interesting enough for just one person to want to read? Is it any good? Is it worth someone purchasing it for X amount of dollars or spending X amount of time reading or listening to? Who in the world really wants to hear what I got to say? That's really what it comes down to. And so that very small, very, very small part that wants to say those things, I quickly have to push that out and just go back to the original thought that I'm not writing this for the money. I'm not writing it for the popularity. I'm not writing it to become the next J.K. Rowling. I'm simply writing it because I want to create. That's all it boils down to, is getting it on paper and getting it written in a way that's structurally good. And if nobody else reads it, I did it my way.
What is it like when we step away from it being from the aspect of talking about careers within the home? What does it feel like when, as a whole, it is a nurturing space? It is where you have support, where there's not the sole, I'm the only leader, but that partnership. We both know what it's like to not have that. Can you elaborate for those that's listening, that may not realize, because you don't know what you don't know?
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about what it would look like from maybe not the best situation to a more balanced, healthy situation when it comes to leadership in the home?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in our situation, me personally, you can take the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan when they're trying to storm the beach, was my life for 15 years as a young adult. Well, pretty much since I was a child, up until my upper 30s. So being in that kind of environment where there's the bombs going off and the gunfire over your head every day for so many years, to then being able to walk next to the brook with the dandelions and just hear the water rumbling is what I would compare to what I have now. It's having peaceful thoughts and peaceful moments and a peaceful home, and knowing that, you know, you and I have talked many times of, people that when they get off work, they don't want to go home because they'd rather work than go home, be with a spouse. And you and I don't understand why they're like that, because we're not like that. I'm ready to get home and be with my two loves of my life. And so, it's from a man standpoint, at least in my situation, it's nice to be able to have that peace of mind and know that you're not coming home to drama, and being able to have that comfort, whether I have a question that I need you to help me on with, a spreadsheet, or, you have a question that you need help with something else. It's just, we're bouncing ideas off each other. And, we can, after, Lord, 14 years of being together, we still can have a conversation that, and find things that we've not ever talked about before, or talk about the universe, or talk about, you know, the go to a Braves game, just go do things. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, it's an adventure almost on a minute by minute case sometimes. But it's something that I enjoy having. It breaks my heart to know that there's people in the world that don't get to experience that.
And by the way, the other love of our life is our 5.5-year-old dog. I was thinking about this the other day, how, when we met and how we met. I mean, I can still remember the exact moment we met online. We met on this
Mhm.
was before Tinder and dating apps, but we did meet on a dating website. And I mean, I know the day, I know the time that I received that message. And it was the moment that my life changed. And I got this picture with this guy with this, really bashful smile and these eyelashes that ladies that are so long, he has to cut them. Cut his eyelashes because they're so wonderfully long. Anyway, but I got this in just the way that you presented yourself. I'm like, this guy's different. And I was pretty immediate from, I think, within, well, I think it was a week. I mean, it wasn't very long. I was like, oh, this is what a healthy relationship is. Because if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you're raised around situations that you now realize is not what you consider nurturing or the most ideal necessarily, and you don't have anything that's been emulated for you, you can sometimes put you at a disadvantage going into adulthood. Early on in our relationship, when we were dating, we were at Walmart, and I do not remember what it was. There was just something that kind of just annoyed me and irritated me, and I felt this just inside of me. And as I'm putting stuff up on the belt, I just got this thought of, do you really want to look back and think this, whatever topic it was is your first argument? Because that's what you're feeling. Like, it was like that feeling inside, like, all right, when we leave, I felt that first argument happening. And I thought, well, no, that's just not worth it. And I shared that with you when we got home, and it's kind of been a mantra for us is, we
Yeah.
all have the exact same time. I tell people all the time, financially, we're all very different. But when it comes to time, every day we are equal in what we receive. And so we have the same amount of time that we can either invest that time into arguing and bickering and just going at each other and tearing each other down, or we can take that time and invest it in being nurturing and being loving. And that doesn't mean we always, it's not Skittles and rainbows and we agree on everything, but we've created an environment to where it is, I can come to you and talk to you about anything. You can come to me and talk to me about anything. And respect doesn't mean you're always going to agree. Respect is about, I'm going to sit here and give you my best effort in listening and giving you whatever it is. Do you need me to listen? Do you need my feedback? I get to wake up every day thanking God for the people that I get to love, thanking God for my life. I get to wake up and say, this is my life. And there was a time in my life that it was like, I can't believe this is my life. And now I'm like, I can't believe this is my life. And it's because of finding the right mentors that have helped me along the way, finding the right relationships, the right life partner. That's what has been so meaningful in my life. Let's just go on the record now that the story that he wrote, he thought of, we'll call it BT before Tina.
Mhm.
Yet, tell us about a character that you had already come up with before we even met.
Well, and people are going to find this very hard to believe, I suppose, but I'm a firm believer of you think it, you put it out there in the universe, whether it's good, bad, um, it seems to come to pass. But I came up with a story driving to work, both directions, and had to have something to kill the hour and a half drive. So I came up with a story and developed a character who's about 5'4" ish and some change, little redheaded little lady called Tina. And, that was 20 years ago when I actually came up with the concept. And, I came up with the main character, and then her character, and sort of a little small plot. And, now it's developed into, the trilogy that it is. And, I had to think about, from a psychological standpoint, the where these characters had to come from. And not knowing what your background was, I already had a sort of a direction from where these characters had developed from. And again, it just, you can call it coincidental, you can call it whatever you want to call it. It's just the way it worked out. The series is called The Shadows of Justice. The first book is Echoes of the Lost. It is being edited right now by Miss Sue Toth. I'm currently drafting book two. I'm about 20% ish done, and then commence into book three.
How do
Yes.
people learn more about your work?
My website is simply just jdcarbonell.com. You can follow me on my social media through the website. You can also sign up for a newsletter that I will begin putting out monthly.
This has been an absolute joy for me to have the love of my life be my very first guest. I'm so lucky I get to do life with you. Thank you for supporting this new chapter of everything that I'm doing, because I know I'm doing a lot, and you sustain me. I mean, you literally make sure that I eat. I forget to eat and drink water and all of that. And on top of everything else, he's also a very talented cook. He can cook anything. I'm very blessed on many levels, and not because of the things that you do for me, but that I get to do life with you. And so I know you always say it, but actually I love you more.
I get to enjoy life with you every moment of my life.
Thanks for being here.
Come on in. Leave the titles at the door.